You're 22 years old, middle of Fort Benning, Georgia, 1943. You work the obstacle course 6 days a week, and the rest of the time, you're either sleeping face down on a cot or writing letters home to your mother in Cleveland that take 3 days just to figure out how to start. Not complicated letters, not long ones, just the ordinary kind. Trying to explain something you don't have language for yet. The language comes later. It always comes later. You volunteered. That's the thing people back home don't understand. Nobody drafted you into the parachute infantry. You raised your hand. You signed your name. You stepped forward when they asked who wanted the extra $50 a month and the chance to jump out of airplanes into combat. And the truth is, at 22, $50 sounded like a fortune, and jumping out of airplanes sounded like something worth telling your grandchildren about. You didn't know enough yet to understand what you'd actually signed up for. The first time you see him, he's standing at the edge of the drop zone in the Georgia heat, watching your stick come down. Not reviewing it from a Jeep, not reading a report about it in an air-conditioned office, standing there in the red dirt like any other man. He's got an M1 Garand on his shoulder, and for a second you assume he's a sergeant, maybe a senior NCO. He's lean, straight, watching each man land with the patient attention of someone who has already seen 10,000 things go wrong and is looking for the 11,000th. Then the lieutenant next to you says his name. That's Colonel Gavin. You look again. You look harder. He doesn't look like what you thought a colonel looked like. There's no carbine, no swagger, no entourage of staff officers trailing behind him with clipboards, performing importance. He looks like a man who solved a problem a long time ago and stopped needing to announce it. He watches you land badly. He doesn't look away. He files it somewhere behind the eyes and moves on. You'll spend the next 2 years wondering what he filed about you, whether it was good, whether it mattered, whether you ever closed the distance between who you were on that drop zone in Georgia and who he was already expecting you to become. The rules come down fast and without explanation. Officers carry the M1 Garand, same rifle as every man in the regiment. Not the carbine, not some lighter weapon that says your rank makes you different. The M1. Because if you are commanding paratroopers, you are a paratrooper. The rifle isn't a symbol, the rifle is a statement. And the statement is, there is no version of this war where I ask you to carry something I won't carry myself. Officers are first out of the airplane door, every time, no exceptions. Officers eat last. Nobody explains the philosophy behind these rules. Nobody stands up at formation and delivers a speech about leadership theory or the psychology of unit cohesion. The rules just exist, the way gravity exists. They're the weather. You adjust. But you notice something happen over the first weeks of training. You notice it happen to the other men, and then you notice it happening to you. And by the time you realize it's happening, it's already finished. You stop thinking of Gavin as something separate from the regiment. He's not above it. He's not behind it. He's inside it, woven through it like threading through cloth. And you can't pull one thread without the whole thing moving. That's not an accident. You'll understand that later. Much later. When you're older and trying to explain it to someone who wasn't there, you'll reach for this metaphor, and it still won't be quite right. But it's the closest thing you have. The training is designed to break you. Or rather, it's designed to find out what's left after breaking. 50-mile forced marches in 36 hours, full combat loads on reserve rations, 1 hour of sleep, then resume the march. Your feet become things that belong to someone else. Something you're dragging behind you at the end of 2 legs that stopped being legs somewhere around mile 34. Gavin does the march. That's the detail that undoes you. You've heard it said. You've half believed it. And then you're somewhere around mile 40, 1 in the morning, and the Georgia darkness is pressing down on you from every direction, and you round a bend in the road, and there he is. Not observing, not supervising from a Jeep, walking. Same boots, same load, same mile 40 that is eating everyone else alive. Nobody cheers. Nobody says anything. There isn't energy left for that. But something happens in the column, some kind of recalibration. like the men had been operating at 70% of what they were capable of, and seeing him there clicked something over that doesn't click back. You make it to mile 50. You don't know how, you don't ask. There's a man in your squad named Petrocelli from a neighborhood in South Philadelphia so specific that he can describe every corner of every block in a 4-square-mile radius. He describes the Italian market on 9th Street the way a cartographer describes a continent. Every stall, every smell, the particular sound the vendors make on Saturday mornings, calling out prices in both English and Italian. He does this when the training is at its worst, not as complaint, as something else. As proof that a world exists where this much pain is not the organizing principle. It's annoying. It saves your life, in a way. Not the actual life, the interior one, the one that was starting to go somewhere dark around week 6. There's a man named Dalton from Vermont who never raises his voice, who somehow during the chaos of night exercises always knows where everyone is. Not because he's keeping track, because he's paying a quality of attention that most people only apply to things that matter deeply to them. He pays it to everything. You watch him crouch and examine a boot print in the dirt for 30 seconds and come up with information you couldn't have gotten from asking a question. These are the men you're going to jump with. These are the men you're going to trust with the specific location of every part of your body in the dark, over a drop zone in a country you've only ever seen in newsreel footage. That's the deal. You understand the deal. You shook hands on it and didn't know you were shaking hands at the time, but the deal is the deal. The C-47 is louder than you expected. That's the first thing. You're standing in the stick, hooked up, the green light coming, and the noise of the engines fills every available space inside the aircraft and inside your skull until there's no room for anything else. No room for fear, no room for the letter you didn't finish. No room for the face of the girl back in Cleveland who held your arm at the train station with both hands like she was trying to transfer something essential through the contact. Just the noise, just the door, just the man at the front of the stick. Gavin is first out. You watch him go. 1 second he's there, and the next second the door is just a door, empty, the dark rushing past it. Then the man in front of you goes. Then it's you. The world opens up around you like a fist unclenching. Sicily is a catastrophe. That's the word the histories will use later, and it's accurate. And it's also completely insufficient for what it actually feels like to land 25 miles from where you were supposed to land, in a country you don't know, in the dark, with no idea where the rest of your regiment is. The winds are doing things to men that the manuals didn't cover. The pilots are doing things that training never accounted for. The aircraft are scattered across 60 miles of Sicilian darkness, and you come down in an olive grove in the center of a world that is simultaneously erupting with gunfire and completely silent in your specific location. You lie still in the grove for 1 full minute. Then you do what Gavin wrote and what Gavin said and what Gavin showed you on 100 training nights in Georgia. You get up, you orient yourself, you move toward the sound of the guns. Somewhere out in that darkness, he's doing the same thing. You know this the way you know the sun is going to come up. You don't check, you don't verify, you know it. He lands with fewer than 20 men. You'll hear this later. He assembles them in the dark, determines which direction leads toward the mission, and marches toward the objective. Not cautiously, not pending further information, toward the sound of the guns. That's the whole doctrine, that's the whole manual, toward the sound of the guns. Biazza Ridge is where you understand what you signed up for. Not the jump, not the training, not the $50 a month. This. The ridge is 100 feet of elevation that controls everything below it. The road, the beach, the difference between the invasion succeeding and the invasion getting thrown back into the sea. And coming toward it is the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, Tiger tanks, 700 Luftwaffe infantry, artillery. You have a rifle. You have men who have been awake for 30-some hours and scattered across 25 miles of hostile countryside. Gavin is out in front of the position, not behind it, not at the command post reading situation maps, out front, in a shallow scrape in the shale where the fire is worst, directing everything. He's assembled clerks and cooks and truck drivers and signalmen. He's turned them into a defensive line by the specific gravity of his refusal to accept any other option. His order is 4 words. We are staying here. Not we will try, not we will hold as long as feasible, not pending reinforcement, we are staying here. A trooper named Eatman finds him in that hole and asks for water. Gavin passes his own canteen. Here, son, take some of mine. That's it. That's the whole moment. But it carries a weight that those 7 words don't account for arithmetically. He's sitting in the dirt on a ridge with 17 Tiger tanks working toward it, and he hands over his canteen without making anything of it. You watch a 75mm pack howitzer, one that was captured from the Italians 20 minutes ago, fire directly at the underside of a Tiger tank as it rears up over a stone wall. The Tiger stops. You file that away somewhere inside you, that such a thing is possible, that improvisation and refusal, and a captured gun with men who have no right to be standing where they're standing, can stop a Tiger tank. The ridge holds. Tobito, who spent the whole fight describing his mother's bread pudding to anyone within earshot, gets the wound that sends him home. You hold pressure. Marcus, who you met at the processing camp outside Palermo, appears on the other side and talks the Beto through it in a steady voice that doesn't match his eyes. He talks about food. He talks about getting home. He talks about everything except what's actually happening with the same deliberate calm of a man who decided ahead of time that panic wasn't going to be on his menu. The medevac comes. Then it's gone. Then the jungle fills back in around the silence it left behind. You never see Thabito again. You'll hear later, secondhand, that he made it. You'll never fully believe it. Nobody warns you about the grinding. They tell you about the firefights. They tell you about the heat. They tell you about the jump and the drop zone chaos and the enemy armor. What they don't tell you is that the thing that takes you apart piece by piece isn't one catastrophic moment. It's the accumulation of all the ordinary ones, the slow subtraction, week after week. The same checkpoints, the same red dirt, the same math about odds that you're doing all the time now, continuously, like breathing, without deciding to. Reeves rotates home. The veteran who told you things worth more than basic training. He shakes everyone's hand, picks up his bag, gets in the truck without looking back. The truck disappears around a bend in the road. Nobody fills the space he leaves behind. Another man is gone by April. You don't want to talk about how. You watch the new replacements arrive, blinking, sunburned, still carrying the faint optimism of people who don't know anything yet. You recognize it. You used to have it. You watch them the way the veterans watched you in the processing camp, with those flat, patient eyes. No malice, no pity. Just this quiet, settled certainty about what comes next. You've become something you couldn't have recognized at 22 in Georgia. Gavin has become something else too, but in the opposite direction. He was already the finished version at the beginning. He's just more fully himself now, more precise, less interested in anything that isn't the mission and the men. He writes condolence letters to the families of every man lost, in his own hand, every one. You hear this from someone who saw the stack of them building up somewhere around the bulge, and it does something to you that incoming fire stopped doing somewhere around month 4. He's writing letters, while commanding a division in the worst winter fighting of the war. He's writing letters to mothers. Normandy is the night that sorts everything into before and after. The drop is worse than Sicily. The flooding in the murderate marshes takes men down in 2 feet of water, and that's a sentence you'll spend years trying to explain to people who ask how combat casualties happen, how you can drown in 2 feet of water, how equipment and darkness and confusion combine into something that the maps back at headquarters didn't account for. He jumps first. Again. Into all of it. Into the chaos and the flooding and the scattered sticks and the hostile countryside and the complete collapse of the plan. He assembles 200 men before dawn and moves. He doesn't have the regiment. He doesn't have the division. He has 200 men from 6 different units who have never trained together, and a sense of where the fight is, and the same answer he always has: toward the guns. La Fière is where the war becomes something permanent inside you. Not just an experience, a tattoo on the interior, something you carry for the rest of your life below the level of the thing you say when people ask how it was. The causeway is 500 yards of elevated road. It's barely wide enough for a vehicle. There is no cover. There is no flanking. There is only the one road across the flooded Murderay, and the Germans have interlocking machine guns covering every inch of it, plus mortars, plus artillery from 3 directions. Ridgway tells Gavin, "You're in charge. We attack at 0930. The 325th Glider Infantry goes across single file, in the open. Men fall, and the men behind them step over the bodies and keep going. That's not rhetoric. That's what happens. That's what you watch happen from your position on the east bank. Gavin is standing in the open, not in a hole, not behind cover, standing upright where the fire is worst, where every soldier crossing that causeway can see him, where the message is transmitted in the clearest possible signal, without a word, without ceremony. If I'm here, you can be here. That's the leadership, right there. That's the whole manual in one image, a man standing where he has no right to be standing, because the men going across that causeway need to know that the general believes what's on the other side is worth going to get. You don't need a speech. You need to see him standing there. You see him standing there. Market garden, he jumps with a broken back. You hear this afterward, not from him. He doesn't mention it. He doesn't mention it during the operation. He doesn't mention it in the weeks after. He commands the 82nd through 9 days of fighting in Holland, with 2 fractured vertebrae from the landing, issuing orders, moving through the lines, doing the thing he always does. Someone notices he's favoring one side. An aide presses him on it. He dismisses it. This is consistent with the man. It is perfectly, entirely consistent with the man. He carried his own canteen water on a ridge in Sicily under Tiger tank fire. He walked mile 40 in Georgia. He was first out of the door in Sicily, in Italy, in Normandy, in Holland. He was not going to report a broken back. The Vaal River crossing. There are no words equal to the Vaal River crossing. Julian Cook's men cross 400 yards of open river in canvas boats with canoe paddles in broad daylight, under direct fire from everything the Germans had positioned on the far bank. More than half the first wave doesn't make it across. The men who do make it ashore storm the German positions with bayonets and grenades. Then they fight 4,000 yards north to take the bridge from behind. 48 men die in the crossing alone. The soldiers call it Little Omaha. Gavin watches it from the riverbank. He ordered it. He knows what he ordered. He doesn't look away. Afterward, a British lieutenant general calls the 82nd the finest division in the world. Gavin files it wherever he files things and goes back to writing letters. The bulge is the winter that no one who was there will ever fully explain to anyone who wasn't. You are in summer boots. The Germans are coming through the Ardennes with the 6th SS Panzer Army, and you are in summer boots with straw stuffed in them because there is no other insulation, and the temperature is near 0, and Gavin is crawling foxhole to foxhole in the dark, checking on men he has no business checking on from a tactical standpoint. A division commander has things to do that are not crawling foxhole to foxhole. Gavin does both. He checks on you. He crouches at the edge of your hole in the dark, asks 2 questions, listens to the answers, files them, moves to the next one. He's not performing care. He's not doing it for the letter home. He's doing it because the man in the foxhole is the mission. The man in the foxhole is the whole point. You'll spend 40 years afterward trying to explain this to people, and failing. Not because the words don't exist, because the words require you to have been in the foxhole, in 0-degree cold, in summer boots with straw in them, having crossed from Sicily to Italy to Normandy to Holland to the Ardennes, to understand what it means to look up and see the commanding general of your division crouching at the edge of your hole in the dark, asking how you are. It means the man at the top and the man at the bottom are, in some fundamental way that the org chart doesn't capture, the same man. It means the word "we" is real. The war ends on a Tuesday. 150,000 Germans surrender to the 82nd Airborne. Their general arrives at Gavin's command post, sees a lean man in a faded jumpsuit with an M1 slung over his shoulder, and says he is too young and does not look like a general. You're there when this happens. You watch Gavin absorb it with the same patient flatness he's absorbed everything for the last 2 years. It takes the German general about 30 seconds to change his mind. That's about right. You go home. You fly commercial, in civilian seats, with a stewardess offering drinks and a man in a business suit 3 inches from your elbow, reading a magazine about things that have nothing to do with anything that happened. Jungle to airport to American street in less than 48 hours. There's no chamber for decompression, no gradual transition. You just land, and there you are, in Cleveland, in October, on a street that looks exactly like it did when you left, except that you are not even slightly the same person who left. People ask how it was. You say fine. They nod and move on because they don't really want the answer, and you don't have words for it anyway. Or rather, you have words, but the words require a set of shared coordinates that nobody in this conversation has. You keep the piece about the ridge to yourself, about Thibodeau, about the causeway and the men stepping over the men and keeping going, about Gavin standing in the open in the worst of it, where nobody with any sense would be standing, because the men going across needed to see that someone believed the other side was worth going to get. You keep all of it behind the eyes where it lives. Years later, you see a photograph of him somewhere. Magazine. Can't remember which one. He's older. He resigned his commission in 1958 rather than endorse a nuclear strategy he thought was insane. They had a 4th star waiting for him, the Army Chief of Staff position within reach. He walked away because he wouldn't pretend to believe in a policy he knew was wrong. Same principle, every level. Same man who wouldn't carry the carbine when his soldiers carried the Garand. You cut the photograph out and hold it for a long time. Same face, same eyes. The thing you always noticed about the eyes, that flat, patient certainty of someone who solved a problem the brain stopped working on a long time ago. You think about the drop zone in Georgia in 1943. The way he stood there, watching each man land, filing things, expecting something. You wonder if you ever closed the distance, if you ever became what he was already expecting at the edge of that red dirt field in the Georgia heat. You think maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the right question is whether you tried. You tried. That's what it gave you. All of it. Sicily and Italy and Normandy and Holland and the Ardennes. Every mile of it. The understanding that trying is the whole curriculum. He was first out of the door 4 times. Into the dark, into the unknown, into the thing nobody could guarantee would work. First. Every time. Some men are shaped by wars. Some men shape wars. And some men shape the people inside the wars, quietly, permanently, through the specific gravity of what they're willing to do in front of other people. He carried the Garand. He was first out the door. He ate last. He wrote the letters. He stood in the open. You were there. You watched. You'll never be able to fully explain what that cost him or what it gave you. You carry it the only way you know how. Quietly. Permanently. Somewhere behind the eyes where nobody looks unless they've been there too. Same war, same mud, same man asking everything. That's what it was worth.